Hey everybody, this is Danny Silva with D Silva Designs, and I am doing a speed sketch for you today. This time it's digital, and it's going to be Little Wonder Woman. This was just a warm-up sketch that I did a while ago. Just had time to edit it now, and I always start off with a warm-up. Usually, sometimes it's traditional, sometimes it's digital. And that helps me loosen up my hands and kind of get the kinks out before I go ahead and start on my commissions or my trading card work. So that's what this is, and I'm doing it in Manga Studio 5EX, and I'm using a Cintiq Companion 2, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So you'll notice that I start off pretty much the same way that I draw traditionally. Is I'll start off with either a red, in this case a red pencil, sometimes I'll use the light blue, and that just acts as my base layer, and I go on real sketchy, real rough, so I don't concentrate too much on the details, but just kind of get the basic figure and costume elements and stuff in there. And then once I get the main figure and all the details that I want in there, I'll start in with the inks and the color and stuff like that. So I really love Manga Studio. I've been using it more and more. Primarily I used to use Photoshop. I would use Photoshop 7, and then I upgraded to CS6, and that is the latest edition I have because I just don't agree with Adobe's Creative Cloud, the way they switched it over. So now you cannot get any newer versions of Photoshop other than CS6. You have to go to the Creative Cloud, and Adobe has stopped creating patches and updates for their Photoshop anything earlier than the Creative Cloud. So basically, if you're going to upgrade to Windows 10, and I've searched and searched and searched to see how well Photoshop CS6 is going to work. Adobe is not going to guarantee that there's not going to be any flaws because they're not going to do any updates for it for CS6. They're only doing updates for the Creative Cloud going forward. So I've been holding off on upgrading to Windows 10 simply for that fact. I don't think there's going to be a problem with Manga Studio, this program that I'm using here, and for what I use, for what I need for a drawing program, Manga Studio does everything that I needed to do. As to compare it to Photoshop, but Photoshop does have a lot more tricks, and I mean for like photo editing and there's just a ton of stuff that Photoshop can do that Manga can't. But again, I haven't been using Manga for too long, maybe a year, if that, and I'm learning new things every time that can get me closer to the things that I needed to do in Photoshop. I end up being able to figure out how to do them in Manga Studio. But there's certain things like editing and converting to CMYK. That's something I have to switch over to Photoshop to do, so I can't get rid of Photoshop yet. But for a lot of the drawing stuff, just sketching and not really editing or converting file formats and things like that, this program works great. So that's kind of what I've been doing a lot of my digital stuff with. And then when I need to convert a file or do different things that require something from Photoshop, then I'll open Photoshop back up. But it's just a bummer that Adobe's not going to be offering any more updates to CS6, and you're basically being forced into moving to the Creative Cloud. So I don't know if you're a Cintiq user and you're a Cintiq Companion user, I should say, the second version, that's the standalone PC, and you've upgraded to Windows 10, you can comment and let me know, tell me I'm wrong. I'm just, once you update, it's kind of, you can, with Windows 10, they're allowing you up to 30 days to go back, but sometimes, certain features you don't use often might not work, and I'm just kind of nervous about that. But if you had good experiences with Windows 10 and you're using a companion, then let me know. Maybe I'll switch over. But for now, I'm just going to stick with the CS6 and using Manga Studio. So yeah, basically back to the drawing. You notice that I pretty much sketched everything out in red on a base layer, and then once I kind of got most of it figured out, I just created a new layer and started with the inks. And this sketch is really rough. It's not going to be too pretty. It's kind of flat. I didn't do a whole lot of shading or anything like that. Again, it's just a warm-up sketch, and I'm trying to get better about my warm-up sketches, because a lot of times I'll start something and then I'll like the way it looks, and then I'll start taking more time, and I have a lot of work to do, and this is the type of stuff that I shouldn't be spending a lot of time. It's just a warm-up, so I'm trying to get better on managing my time and things like that. But warm-ups are important. Just like anything else, like stretching before you work out or before you run. It helps a lot with hand-eye coordination and things like that, especially if you're using a tablet instead of a Cintiq. I used, before I got my Cintiq, I used, the Wacom or Wacom, however you say it, the tablets. And yeah, I had to warm up. Usually a longer warm-up session than I do with the Cintiq, just to get used to it, just only because I didn't draw digitally every day. I do a lot of traditional work, so just getting used to it. And after I got my warm-up sketch out of the way, I was kind of ready to go. And as far as the tools that I use in Manga Studio, I use the basic pencil tool for my sketching. The settings that it comes with are pretty standard. I don't really mess with it much. I will sometimes use the I'll change the density maybe, but a lot of times what I'll do is, rather than changing the density, I will change the texture. I'll increase the roughness of the texture, so that way it's like the paper has a lot more grit, and so it simulates a pencil a little bit more, and it also makes it lighter, so you can get those really light wispy areas. Didn't really look like that here because honestly I didn't really care about how the drawing was coming out. I just kind of went at it and wasn't too concerned. And if you notice in the beginning, I had, like, one of her legs was way too short, and I'll just lasso tool the problems and move it out of the way. As far as the inking, I just use the G pen, just pretty much standard. I don't stabilize it too much for these quick sketches, because I don't want there to be too much drag. As far as lag, because if I crank the stabilization up, I know on the standard settings it goes up to 15, and that doesn't really slow it down that much, but you can actually enter in your own value. So you can go, I don't know how high it goes, but I've gone up to 150, and the lag is a lot worse at that level, but when you're doing really slow, steady lines, it stabilizes it. It works. It's just if you're working fast, then it might not be the most convenient thing. Another thing I love about Manga Studio is the ability to rotate, and I know you can do that in Photoshop. I've seen tutorials online. I don't know what versions they were for, but when I was trying to set up my preferences to make it to make it so I can rotate the canvas just like I would my drawing board. It wasn't that easy. I couldn't really figure it out. So I just said, screw it. I'm going to do my sketching in Manga Studio, and I'll leave Photoshop for the other stuff. But if you have a Cintiq, I know the 22 HD and it doesn't even have to be the HD, but the 22 or the 21, I know they have those little swivels that, so you can swivel the entire Cintiq around, so you don't need to worry about rotating the screen or anything. So that's kind of, I don't know, I guess you don't really need it if you have one of those, but I don't. So alright, so as far as the coloring, you notice that I went in and after I did the inks, I just did some very light layers of just gray shading. So it was kind of shaded. I created a new layer and did some gray tones on there. Real flat. I used the G pen for the whole thing. I wasn't trying to get a really smooth shaded look. I was just going at it kind of fast. And then once I get, you know, the shaded and shadowed areas done, then I create another layer and drop my color on top of that, either using a multiply or an overlay setting on that layer. Multiply, typically the colors are gonna look a little darker, and overlay, I guess I don't really know how to describe it. It's not as dark, but you have to. For me, I have to play with the colors a little bit more to get it to look like I want it to look in the overlay mode. So it just depends. Sometimes I'll do two layers. I'll do one multiply, one overlay, and put different colors on each one, just so I can achieve the tone and the look of the colors that I want. And after I add in, you know, I'll do little tweaks. I create a new layer for every little thing that I want to do, because sometimes I'm not sure how I want to do something, because there's so many ways digitally that you can create shadow or add some pink into an area that I'm not sure which way I want to do it or which way will look best. I'll always create a new layer, and then once I'm done with it, I can drop it down. Now I'm adding the highlights. I'll do another layer for the highlights, like the stars, highlights in the hair. And then I'll do a background layer. And right now I'm just playing with the layer settings just to see which one I like more, which one's going to work best. Just like to do a simple bright background. Nothing too crazy. Again, I don't want to spend a lot of time. And for the background, to get that kind of washy feel, I usually use the brush tool with the transparent watercolor setting. I like that tool because you can kind of fade out without changing the brush density or doing anything crazy. You can lay on deep colors just with sensitivity, and then you can kind of fade them out a little bit in a painterly fashion just by using light pressure on the edges, and kind of blend. You can blend the white back into the color and so on and so forth. It's very intuitive, easy to use, and quick. And now I'm just adding, added an overlay layer onto the lasso. Just did some yellow. Did yellow over the whole thing, and now I'm going to take away some of the yellow, erase some of it away, just to give certain parts of the rope depth. And that's pretty much it. I want to thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. Hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take it easy.